Tensegrity is the bones of the body floating in the soft tissue. So this explains why hip pain may be an issue in the foot rather than in the hip itself. Everything is interlinked and reliant on each other. So when a client says is complaining about having knee pain, it may be a problem with their hip or with their ankle rather than the hip itself, putting pressure on the hip. Within the shoulder joint, there are two movements. The abduction is the movement in horizontal plane away from the midline, whereas the adduction is the movement on horizontal plane towards the midline. And this happens on a vertical axis. The shoulder girdle protraction is a forward movement in horizontal plane away from the spine. So you're trying to touch your shoulders together in front of you. Whereas the retraction of your shoulder girdle is a backward movement in a horizontal plane towards the spine, and this happens on a vertical axis. The lateral spinal flexion is a movement of the head and or trunk in a frontal plane laterally away from the midline, and this happens on a sagittal axis. Now the hip, I'm just going to stand up and adjust this, is a medial rotation rotary movement around the longitudinal axis of the bone towards the center of the body on a sagittal plane. So you're turning your thigh inward. As you can see, my thigh is going inward and the longitudinal axis of the bone is a movement outwards, or towards the center of the body. The lateral rotation is the rotary movement around the longitudinal axis away from the center of the body on a vertical axis, turning the thigh outward. So when I bring my foot towards the center of my body, turning my thigh out. Now the knee, for flexion, I'm going to bend the joint and reduce the angle. So this, I'm going to bring my foot up towards my glute. And that's going to reduce the angle right here, causing flexion in the joint. Now for knee extension, I'm going to straighten the joint, resulting in an increase of the angle on the transverse plane and a vertical axis. So when I straighten my leg, I'm now increasing this angle, therefore I have an extension in the knee.